All
Yeah.
right, here we go. All right. Hello and welcome today, everyone. I am so excited to do this chat today with Jay and Jaydee from the Rising Sovereign podcast. And for those of you who are joining from Jay and Jaydee's side, my name is Nico, and I'm the creator of Brighter Days, Darker Nights here on Substack. And we all know each other through the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology and the Quantum Biology Collective. And we are interested in home birth, in home education, in quantum lifestyles, in deciding for ourselves how we direct our lives and where they go. So thank you all for showing up today. Jay and Jaydee, would you care to introduce yourselves to everyone who's here today, as well as for those who are coming and catching the replay? You are all also so welcome to jump into this conversation with us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nico. It's really great to be here and see you and your baby.
Yep,
Oh,
he's here too.
hmm How you want to start?
Sure. I'm Jay Asvari. This is Jaydee Asvari. So we are the founders of ADA, which was the Appalachian Academy of Therapeutic Arts. That we founded in 2020, and we ran until 2024 when the hurricane happened. That kind of put things on hold for us. And more recently, we have started the Rising Sovereign podcast. And we're on a journey of discovery of how to better understand and share and empower others to live in ways that are in alignment with a lot of these principles that we feel are really important to our lives and our children's lives and humanity's lives. So,
Yeah.
that's kind of a overarching summary. There's obviously more specifics, but is there anything that you would want to add to that or share?
Starting a nature school wasn't ever something that I thought I would do. We're the parents to 6. We have one child together who's 7. The other 5 kids coming blended, starting at the age of 22 and going down to 13. So we've been at this for a couple decades now. And a lot of times we start these conversations and people are like, well, how did you know? Like, how did you know you wanted to have a home birth? How did you know you wanted to homeschool? And that's just such like a vast existential question that we spend hours like searching through what shows up. I don't know if I could say we ever have found an answer yet, but I do know that from a very young age, as long as I can remember, there was a part of me that was connected to something sacred that I was able to tap into. And through that place, I was drawn to, I get, the terms of holistic living or natural birthing, or really just trying to understand the nature of reality. And from, that vantage point, it always just made sense. Like, of course I'd have a baby at home. Why wouldn't you do that? Or of course, like the perinatal period affects a human's development and have consciousness before conception. And why would I ever put things in my children's bodies that like have only been around, for 100 years? Like all these kinds of things that have continued to like propel the work that we do. And through that, things are born, like children or the school that we ran. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I love that. And it makes sense to pull in the things from, like our genes have memories carrying through from previous generations. And so it sounds like you've been able to tune into that and hear what your body and biology are saying to you and what the universe, like what you hear. And then to actualize it in the real world doesn't necessarily look like what everyone else is doing right now. It looks like what you have heard, right? Like
Yeah.
kind of an intuitive, being mindful about how things are going and what was happening before and how we can carry that into the present.
Totally.
Yeah, definitely things that I think about often too. So you did home birth for your own children, correct? And right. And so now you are also educating that at home and you have children, across the age span, which is really just so wonderful. I'm always looking for those. My oldest is 13. I have 5, the youngest in my lap here. Just crossed out of the 4th trimester here at 3 months now. So I'm always looking to connect with folks like you two who are kind of ahead in the journey to be able to learn from your wisdom and hear how it can inform my own choices. And I know a lot of the women who resonate with my work are looking for ways to also bring nature into their own homes and making these kinds of decisions about how they're going to birth and how they're going to raise their children. So what kind of like foundational things have you found have stood the test of time for your family?
Nature. It's kind of an obvious one, but I think it is the most consistent. It's the most obvious, but it's the thing that's always been there. That when I had 3 boys under the age of 3, if everything was like flying off the handle, I could make them run around trees until they couldn't run anymore, Or just finding those ways to reconnect to that and to settle. And it was also through attending the Quantum Biology Institute's program that we like opened up to a whole nother level of how much the the circadian principles of our lives, even though we thought we were living naturally, weren't quite there yet. So that's something that even in the last year has shifted for us. And having a holistic approach and having the children in nature as much as possible then lends itself to not being on screens as much, or looking deeper into why that's not necessarily the best thing for kids. And so layering in the circadian principles with that has continued to just really re-emphasize that nature isn't just like a cliche, like just going for a walk, it's good, but no, it's like essential for everything. And living in the age that we are, where we really seek the answers, like we're drawn to the practical, we're drawn to the tools, we're drawn to the scientific research to show us that something's necessary. It's like it's continued to reiterate that nature is really the key thing that we all need.
Right. Well, I mean, to echo a little bit of what you were saying, I think that we had built the school ATA in a way where it was really based on nature immersion. It was off grid. We weren't using electricity or anything like that. And even within that, though, I feel like through really deepening our understanding of quantum biology, there's a way that you can be more intentional and specific and hone that process within the lifestyle. Because
Can I show you?
oh, here comes
oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, so that is one of our children. Can you see? All right. So
okay. Oh,
like
what a gorgeous setting.
Of like a homeschool graduated child who enrolled in college.
Oh, wow.
Chose automotive and got his like whatever automotive degree by the time he was 18, and now we have like 4 cars in our driveway and 2 motorcycles. So that was him like leaving with his friends. So
did you see the motorcycles?
motorcycles?
Oh yeah, briefly.
Yeah, that was him.
Yeah.
Him and his friends. Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's
I
so
think-
great.
I mean, nature and curiosity, honestly, like I'm thinking what else? And it's really like this and like deep commitment to being curious about our children, being curious about the nature of reality. And each kid really took their own path, and understanding, for example, that, a child will learn to read, like, because it's part of the matrix of our reality, just like they will learn to walk. And the one that we just saw got his automotive degree. One of the other ones is working. He didn't end up finishing. He got his like homeschool high school diploma. He didn't do any early college, but now he's working at a landscape business. And then the oldest also got a college degree through early college, homeschool diploma, and now has a master's degree in like computer science. And we raised them with no computers at all. So it's like they're going to do what they're going to do, but how you how you foster the elements of curiosity and something within the sovereignty that then again brings you back to nature, that no matter where you are, you can find a tree if you need one.
Well, I mean, I
Yeah.
think that the same principles that are true in nature are also true inside of all of us. Like, there's really, ultimately, there is no clear distinction between the principles of nature and our biology. And so, by extension, it's like finding ways to promote and support that, both, by kind of in an organic way, but also in an intentional way. And so, that's this sort of this intersection of what we like to try and tease apart. It's like, where are the structures that are in in our lives, and the things that are in our lives that plug us into that, and then, like, where are the structures and things that are maybe a little bit outside of that or not as aligned, and how can we be strategic and discern, and there's no one path for, like, any kid or any family, but, like, really, by connecting with others and putting our heads together and really striving to find some sort of deeper sense of both connection and meaning, then, like, we can unravel this thing collectively. That's the idea. That's the hope. So
Yeah, I love that you shared that story about your children and how they each took their own different paths. And that because I think one of the things that I've heard from folks who are afraid of homeschooling are that their children will miss out, or their children won't have the skills they need to integrate with the greater world. So it's really wonderful to hear that your children were able to find a way to express themselves and find their own path and be successful, even as young adults, because, like, those are great accomplishments to be able to have a job, to be able to complete a degree. Those are things that many young adults these days are struggling with, who have been through the the ordinary system of school outside of the home. So yeah, that's really, really interesting. And I've heard from other families too that are living a very woodsy outdoor kind of life, that their oldest children have gone into automotive in particular, and I'm familiar with the cars that need work, right? And they're such a good deal, and then they have the work, and it's a fun hobby project, and it is kind of nice because you can see it all unfolding right in front of you, and you know where they are. But then they get the cars and they go out and drive. So, like, how has that been for you? Like, going, because sometimes people are approaching homeschool from the perspective of wanting to protect their children and keep their children safe. So then, like, you do that for a time, but eventually, whether you're homeschooling or sending them off to school at a younger age, they are going out there into the world. Right? Like seed pods. Where are they going to land? Are they going to find the right conditions to be nourished where they go? Oh.
Well, we did an interview with one of a good friend, Josh McLaughlin, and I was processing actually in that episode of our podcast a little bit of my own grief around some of the things I felt like I didn't do with my children. And what was it? I feel like my brain still hasn't integrated his answer to me, because I'm still like, oh, but what did he say to me?
Oh, I mean, it was something about like fostering a strong will or a sense of defiance.
Yeah, almost like like a little bit of that, where I maybe felt like I offered them too much curiosity or too much questioning or too much defiance um without enough of something at the center to return to. I think that's been a big part of, like, this next journey of parenting, now raising a 7-year-old and having older kids, where you can really see how they turned out, at least in their early 20s, and be able to look back and now see, like, oh, how should I do things differently or the same? And some of that has to do with, I was very much like, when my older kids were born, it was like early 2000s. So like 2001, 2002. And so much of the world was like attachment parenting. I was kind of like sorting through this call, trying to remember the history of it all, because it was really like that's when doula work was coming to the surface. Like I was going to look up like when DONA was founded, but it was all in that time period because I was like finding those trainings and they were brand new, and attachment parenting was really like all the books were on that. And there's still so much of that that I practice and I feel is completely relevant and important, obviously. Yet I was contemplating on how much I thought like their attachment to me would be enough.
Mm.
And I was realizing that I didn't give them, or what I was thinking is I didn't give them enough of an attachment to something that was more constant and steady, because like I won't always be here, right? Like, or maybe however I'm showing up could shift and change and it might not resonate for them anymore. And our attachment clearly also, like when children grow into their teenage years and their early 20s, the desire is to detach from their parents and figure out who they are. And so that really kind of like, it still does, but it kind of spun me some, because I was like, well, I breastfed them. They slept on me. They didn't go to daycare. They were always, I was their world, which is, that's true 100,000%. But it had to do with like giving them something else that felt maybe even beyond me, to be able to ground to wherever they were. And if that's something spiritual, I don't know. I'm trying to sort it out. But Josh's reflections were helpful because through, the way that I did raise them, they have this like deep sense of questioning things that are outside of themselves and being able to return and reflect on how does this match up for me and my internal like worldview and structure at this point in time and in space where they're at, right? And yeah, I think that if children are growing up with parents who are questioning like the norm or the mainstream, they're definitely going to complain about that at times. Like they will. But it also allows them, like, it gives them a blueprint to know that you can question those things. And I really think that that's what's behind how we've chosen to live and why we raise them, is not necessarily you always have to question something or something's right and something's wrong, but you do have the ability to choose. That these things that might be told like you don't have a choice around, whether it's how you give birth or choose medical care or choose education, there really is space, and how to like be able to return to that when you need it as you continue to face all the elements of your life. Yeah. Little bit of a rant, but
Yeah, no, that's really interesting and definitely super interesting to think about, because like coming from the place where I am, where my oldest is just now starting to show those kinds of signs, where I'm seeing that she's going to be going out into the world soon. And so there's the foundation that's set in the home, but then there's also the greater anchor that they will carry forward, hopefully beyond our lifetimes, that they may also pass down to their children, should we be so lucky as to become grandparents someday. And so setting that tone of family culture as a decision-making process and as something that's greater than any of the individuals inside of it really makes so much sense to me, and also fits so much with the idea of the natural order of things,
yeah,
that the world is made of patterns. And so it's not so much teaching people like our children the specifics, only makes sense in the context of the moving pattern, which is multidimensional. We can see a snapshot, right, in a moment.
yeah,
Like we can teach them, or they can learn how to read under our guidance. But what they will read is going to follow that same pattern, but it's not the same books that we're reading with them as children, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the other things that might have changed compared with that approach from like the early days of very strong attachment parenting to recognizing the need for more of a social attachment beyond the individuals?
I think some of it seems a little obvious maybe, but like even just some of the fears, I think that's pretty consistent for most parents from the first child to the second to the third. I know I've said this already, but like the concern around reading, for example, and more of the questioning of, are they getting what they need to be? Will they be behind? And having more of that worry versus a settledness to understanding that they will like continue to find their way, and I will know some part of me. And I think that does go back to the attachment, but like I will know, like I could tell when my second oldest wasn't reading like the first, or wasn't reading like, my nephew, for example. And so then you start to slow down and be present to them and kind of notice what you can around what is different with this child's reading in this example. And from that, I learned after a couple months that he had dyslexia. So everything about how we held his reading needed to change. And then the next one came and the next one. So with each one, like the specific thoughts around how something needed to be just can continue to expand, I think. And so with our youngest, for example, he's now watching 5 older children that he's aspiring to be to. And I feel like he's a combination of all of them. And, so that's a completely different experience of, childhood than the others. But I also see how much I, maybe in looking back, wish I would have had stronger community. We moved a lot, and my children didn't have a lot of different, like they didn't have a lot of friends around them or family at different points in time. And that might be something that, we were talking too around where does our wisdom really come from, right? So we are in this like super high pace, fast world of the internet, and we look for an answer and we have like 300,000 answers in 3 seconds to a simple question. And our brains are so wired now to just expect life like that.
Yeah.
And in order to like pull back and realize that landscape will always be changing, because tomorrow those 300 answers will probably be different. And how do we cope with that level of like madness almost, but like uncertainty to the question that we're looking at, to find the answer to. And so in this like aspect of looking at how we're parenting our young one, I think there is more of a slowing down and a trusting, and then going back to how can we cultivate some more community for him? Because where does that knowledge, like the long-standing knowledge, really come from? It comes from the stories. It comes from the people, the ones who came before us. Just like I can reflect on my own parenting journey, like the elders and the things that we've really like turned so much away from the like interpersonal person-to-person experience to a book or to a podcast, and all those things are great, but
Well, interestingly enough, so Jaydee's dad passed about what was it, like a month before Jara was born?
yeah, Jara's our youngest.
Yeah. And on numerous occasions, he has referenced your dad, like very matter of factly, like there's a relationship there. And it's through a lot of the pictures and the stories and the sharing from all of the older siblings and the extended family. It's almost like he feels like he knows him. And so it's really cool to see how these things are carried by, there's no idea in his mind that there's really a separation there. Like he has a strong connection to that. And so him being the youngest of all of these older siblings has definitely provided an landscape for him to be an understudy of all these disparate personalities. And
I think collectively I'm noticing, for example, like in a lot of the online programs I've been in for a number of years, or learning platforms, or different people I follow, that now there's a return to one-on-one. There's a return to coaching. There's like we've gone through this, like, here's all the online courses that you can just do, but wait, no, I don't really want that. Actually, I really just want to talk to a person and hear their story, and or sit with them. And I question it, because how many times in like human history do we have to go from one swing of the pendulum to the next to remember what's really important? But I think that element of how does like a human even continue to live on through the ages, right? It's like I'm just thinking about you sharing that about my dad. It's like he is still here because his presence is so strong through the story.
Yeah.
And that's not something that would come in the same way as like reading about him online or
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I love that. The storytelling and you're sharing your journey about how it's gone, from having just your first child, your second child out to now your sixth child and how um there's so many more voices, right? Like your family
Mhm.
itself is a small community. And especially if you are able to anchor in place locally with people and not continue the moving journey, then
Mhm.
there's like, more peers for them. The storytelling can go through. And I don't know, tell me if you've noticed this too, but as my family has grown, I've noticed that it's like bedtime and wake schedules with a large group of children is actually easier than it was when I just had one child because
Mhm.
they have this social flow. Like I'm always talking
Mhm.
about how social cues are circadian cues. And so they're excited to wake up and chat with each other and help each other through the morning routine. And at the nighttime, they also are excited, and there's like that inertia. The older ones already know how, the younger ones immediately just fall in line and they teach each other and they remind each other and be like, everyone knows from like, did you brush your teeth? And everyone will be pointing like, oh, so and so hasn't done it yet. And you're like, okay, get in there. And then, they're like, well, can you come with me? Like, yep, of course, and they're just like, all there together, like sharing the story with each other of how we live. So there's, in some ways, less of that immediate demand compared with the first child, where it's like you were saying that you are everything, and especially from that attachment parenting mindset. Like in the beginning, you really are the main anchor, but over time, there's
Mhm.
something larger than family. And when you enter into a community, when you enter into being involved with the entire biofield of your ecosystem, there are many things
Yeah.
that you can anchor on that are larger than the individuals.
Yeah.
Um, there's so much more time. I'm wondering if you care to comment on, like, did you ever have a birth that wasn't at home, or did you ever have your kids in school and then compare that, or was it always home birth, always homeschool?
Well, let's see. So all of my children were born at home. Um, I'll start there. The
Mhm.
first Well, I actually had been studying midwifery for a couple years before my first child was born.
Mhm.
So I honestly like went into it thinking that I like knew what to expect and what was going to happen. And I
Oh.
didn't at all, and I came out of it like feeling actually pretty traumatized and unsure. Like I wasn't really even able to put my finger on it because all of my births have been pretty straightforward. Like it was first baby 7 hours, and then baby everything was fine from like the outside. Um and then I became pregnant with my second child unexpected pretty quick after the first. And all of those like unclear like feelings more than even words came back to me, but ended up having another home birth and kind of the same thing was even quicker, like 3 or 4 hours or something like that. And but it was a really like almost I don't know if it was like went into depression, but it was a very contemplated place because I had thought I wanted to be a midwife and then I had these two births that seemingly were really great, but left me feeling like I was missing something. And I didn't really know what to do with that for a long time. Well, not a long time because I had my third son within a year and a half after that one. Um, but it definitely spun me for about 6 or 7 months, and then I got back into birth work because it's something that if I think most people who are called to it, you always keep it. It's some
Mhm.
part of you. Um, and so I also kind of put the midwifery career on hold because I was having children, but then I was like, "No, I'm gonna finish this thing. I'm gonna figure out why I didn't feel like my births were so great, even though they were great." And I moved my kids to Olympia, Washington, because at the time, Seattle Midwifery School was pretty much the only place to learn midwifery in an institution. Because before that, I had been doing some short apprenticeships and wanting to learn more traditionally, but then I just like, no, I want to like do this thing. And then I found out I was pregnant with my third son right when I was supposed to start at Seattle Midwifery. And so I didn't do it. And I was living in a community house at the time. And there was a woman there who was due just about the same time as I was. And she was having an unassisted birth. And I was like, well, what is that? And at the time, that was so new. There was very little internet. There was like 2 blogs about it. There was 1 book written about it. And I dove into that also, though, because through hearing her experience of having a straightforward, like, nurse midwifery birth, she came away, like, able to articulate things that went on that I wasn't able to articulate with my home births. And it really had to do with autonomy and handing that over. Even though I felt like it was all mine because I was at home, how would I not still be autonomous? I wasn't. And
Right.
there's so much to that, right? Like, that's hours and hours of conversation, but it really came down to me, like, having clarity around what was off in those births, and then through having an unassisted birth with my third, feeling like I reclaimed something. And right shortly after that, I found the matrona and Wapio, which I don't know, some people might know of her in that program. But I took her program and then told her, like, this is what I've been looking for and I'm not leaving. And so I became a student, like, her first student teacher ever. And then I became like a teacher within her program and the director of her program for a number of years. But it did, like, and then some time went on, and there were a number of women who went through and, like, graduated at the same time I did from the matrona, and they were having babies and having, like, this version of, like, an unassisted birth with, like, a student midwife friend and, this more of a community sense, but without, like, a focused midwife present. And after maybe a few years, 2 or 3 years of people doing that, there was some reflection on that we were all having, and they felt like something was missing, like, in that picture. And through that, it really came down to having somebody more specific for postpartum support, immediate postpartum support. And so that was, like, a really interesting thing that we all kind of spent some years playing around with and thinking about and writing blogs about.
Yeah.
But so then my fourth child, I decided I was actually in North Carolina then. I had left the Pacific Northwest, and I chose to have a woman who was a midwife there, but I didn't have her do anything with me until immediately after my daughter was born. And there was, the idea kind of to encapsulate that and how we framed it as, like, young midwives or teaching other midwives is that how would you ever know more about a woman's birth than she does? Like, during the birthing process, there is a connection to something beyond the earthly realm. And as a midwife or a birth holder, a keeper, we're holding space for that. And we're understanding that, like, we might be called into the center, but truly we're holding the edge. And
Yes.
after the baby's born, it shifts, right? Then it's like, my baby's here and I'm here with my baby. And yes, come and nurture me. I don't want to think about like my placenta or my bleeding so much right now. I just want to be held and cared for. And so that birth looked like having someone do that for me, which was incredible. And then our last birth with ours together, I actually, you want to talk about that? I'm talking so much.
No, it's okay. Keep going.
Yeah, it's lovely to hear your stories, and it's always a gift to be able to sit at the feet of a woman as she is sharing, especially having,
Thank you.
Experience over time and hearing that dynamic phrasing, having reflected on it. So, yeah, we'd love to hear you continue.
Okay. Well, the fourth birth, how old was I when Jaro? I was like 37, 38. Fifth birth. I was quite different than having a baby at 22. And I could feel that. Like, I could feel that I wanted to relax a little bit more and surrender a little bit more. So throughout all of my other pregnancies and births, really, I was kind of like my own midwife. Even when I had a midwife there, I was a student midwife. Then I did unassisted birth. So I was very much my own midwife. And I love to learn. I love to understand things. So I'm always researching and, bouncing what somebody tells me off of my own like findings. And with the last one, there was a point in time where I was like, you know what? I just like to be cared for through this whole process. So the woman that attended me in that immediate postpartum with my daughter, my fourth birth, I had her come on as kind of like, it wasn't still full midwifery care, I would say, but kind of as like an elder midwife space holder. So I would let her, kind of take the reins, and I tried to relax a little bit. I don't know how well I really did, in all honesty. But
Well, you did allow him to gestate for like
yeah, so
about 43 weeks. So
it was at the end. So most of my babies were born like around 40 to 41 weeks. And my youngest went to 43 weeks.
My
So
second was that, yeah.
yeah, it was really helpful to have that elder midwife woman there in those last couple weeks, because it like took me to the edge of, is this okay? Is this not okay? Almost every moment, and surrendering and breathing and being present to, there's no indications this isn't okay. And if there was, I would know. And so every day we just woke up to, what does that mean? How does that look? And it was really great to have her there to reassure me in that process. And yeah, so do you want to share his birth story a little bit? You could talk about
Sure,
that, because it's pretty, you were a big part of it.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, so my daughter that is not with JD she's 16. And so that was actually a hospital birth that I went through. And we had like, it was interesting the things that I experienced going through that, because I didn't really know anything about anything. I know we did have a midwife involved, but it was like nurse midwifery. And so it wasn't really, I was like searching for something, but the circumstances of that time in my life didn't really allow for anything close to like the level of, autonomy within that context. But within this other context, within Jaro's birth with JD and I, um, it was only the second time that I'd been involved in a birth. And both JD and the midwife that was there, like they had their different levels of understanding and comfortability with things. But I had an experience of seeing JD go silent, and I went to go investigate where things were at and was able to see Jaro's head, upside down. But it was like a really deep blue color.
Yeah.
And there was something really like surprising and primordial and a little bit like startling to me about this image, because there was like, it was like very ancient, and there was no movement whatsoever. Like I had no context for like what I was seeing. So that happened. Things progressed.
Yeah.
Well,
I think at one point you had called
I could
midwife.
Yeah, and now I've like, it's like I'm actually like, I've been out of the discussion and the proper like way of looking at everything from a midwifery context for so many years now. I feel like I'm going to say this wrong, but it was like pretty much textbook for a mild shoulder dystocia. Like there was, contraction, I pushed, pause, contraction, push, like pause, and nothing happened after 2. And there was something in me that just knew. I was like, all right, like this is not how it's supposed to happen. Like I got 2 contractions. Usually at this point, a baby's out, and he didn't come out. So I said, like, yelled, I'm like, Jay, get her, get the midwife. And so she came in, she did her thing, and he was fine. He was out. But it was really interesting. Now we look back on it, I was like, well, did I know that something like that was going to unfold? And that's why I wanted her there. If she wasn't there, what would we have done? But
Well, I'm watching this and I
Yeah.
hear JD say, his shoulder's stuck, get him out of me.
yeah.
And we didn't have any ultrasound to know
That it was a boy. You just
whether it was a boy or a girl, but I watched
but
this
get him
moment
out.
of
yeah.
absolute certainty
I
of
was so
just
certain.
his shoulder's stuck, get him out of me. And I was like, oh dang, she's really
Mhm.
certain of this. And so then it was very, very quick after that. She was able to do a quick little
Mhm.
dislodging of the shoulder, and he came out. And I think that time under compression really deepened the blueness. It was deep dark blue.
Yeah.
And for me, it was a little bit they weren't concerned.
No,
but
because I'm looking at him from, my frame of reference, and I'm like, oh, his tone is good. Oh, I could see the little things. And I'm like, he's fine. And so did the midwife. We both looked at each other, but from Jay's perspective, we didn't really vocalize that very
Right.
much. And he wasn't crying. He was slightly subdued from the experience, but overall I could tell he would be okay.
Yeah.
But from your end of things, you
Well,
were a little.
I was there for I don't know how long, maybe somewhere between 1 and 5 minutes before I had
Before you said
before
something.
my level of uncertainty and discomfort, I needed to do something. So I guess I just laid down with you guys on the floor and started doing a really deep and just full breath and just letting it go. And when I did that, he started to cry a little bit.
You brought him. Yeah, you had to bring
And
him
so,
in.
there was maybe 5 to 7 of those breaths because I could see that there was a response. And so after that, I felt like I could settle a little bit because the level of presence that I was seeing and responsiveness with Jaro was, it put my mind at ease. So, that was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious because I've heard some folks share in their birth stories that as their children grow up, sometimes the ones who are slower to come into their bodies after birth sometimes approach life with a little bit of a slower pace. I'm wondering if you've seen that in your son or if once you arrived, he was there.
I would say the exact opposite.
He's
probably
I'm wondering. Yeah.
Yeah. He's our most active and present and ready for the world kid. And I mean, is that because he's the youngest of 6? I'm sure that has something to do with it. But maybe not.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be intimidating to a certain, certain soul. So
Yeah, I mean, well, pretty quickly there, he really bulked up.
yeah, he was the fattest baby ever.
He was
so fat.
But then I remember also when he started crawling,
Oh yeah.
he was like turbo crawler.
He would crawl so fast.
People would come over and see that and they would be startled.
Yeah.
So once he came in, he was pretty solid.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. The last one on the heels of all those great children. Yeah, we keep saying and noticing that as we have more children that they learn how to talk faster. They don't all learn how to walk faster. My second was the fastest. He was a 9-month walker that way. And he also went to 43 weeks. So that is something I've actually seen in research is that the children who do gestate a lot longer tend to have really, I mean, it's obvious, but just a stronger kinetic development and tend to have more of a kinetic strength. So yeah, good on you to nourish him for so long, JD. Yeah. Home birth. Yeah, that's lovely. And I also really connected with what you shared about wanting that that nurturing and to be nurtured in that space. And I think it's a really interesting conversation that we could have around the balance between community and support and autonomy and freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And that when the greater social structure feels controlling, then to have them in there can feel like interference. But when the greater structure is supportive, to have them there feels right, like support.
Yeah.
So I think that that's something that we definitely see in the birth world, and that is then echoed again with education. Like in birth, we're told you need a professional to support you. And then when our children start to get beyond like the stage of learning how to read, but learning how to think about the world, they're like, oh, well, you need a professional for that too.
Yeah.
So how did that flow go for you from living at home birth, knowing that was the right way? Did you always know that you wanted to also be the main provider of your children's education? Or was that something that developed over time?
I don't know if I was clear that I wanted to be the facilitator. That still has been such an ebb and flow as far as like homeschooling coming just from us. I did know that I wanted something different for my children than I had, because I
Okay.
didn't like I went through like public education in a small town, did really well, was like the president of the school at one point. But it always felt like I
can
was
see that, Jaydee.
I was like, if it always felt stifling on some level, and always kind of felt like I'm doing this for what? Like this is pointless. Like, and how much more I could have learned or done had it not been so structured with like one end game kind of thing, which was college at the time. And when I went to college, I had a full scholarship. I was going to do pre-med, and I went to a hospital birth. And that's when everything changed. Yep. I went to hospital birth, and I was like, oh no. Like, actually, this is not at all, sorry, like how I thought this would go. And so, yeah, the mini existential crisis, I've probably had many. But at that point, hi, neighbors. I was working with somebody and I was sharing this story, and she's like, well, my roommate's learning from this midwife south of the city where we were living. You should go meet with her. So I did, and I quit college and started studying midwifery. But so like the education piece, I think once I did, move out of the control of like being at home with my parents and going to high school, there wasn't ever a choice for me to have homeschooled. They could have done it, but it just wasn't something that you did. In the community I was in, I guess it's clearly people have been doing it for a very long time. But then when I was in college and I had more choice to say, wait a minute, actually, this isn't how I want to learn. This isn't what I want to learn. There's other ways to learn. And really just beginning to explore that for myself was then what I wanted for my own children. And it's looked so different. Like at one point when I was in Washington State before we moved here, I was part of forming a Sudbury school, which I don't know. Are you familiar with that?
No,
Sudbury
I'm not.
Education. I'm sure it's very much like unschooling. So it was, I guess you could say maybe the original kind of like unschooling concept. It hit the planet in this child-led learning. It hit the planet in the 70s. There was like kind of like the pilot prototype school, I think is somewhere in the Northeast. And there's a book, The Sudbury Concept of Education. But it was so much like you don't direct the child at all. And as I began to form this like small collective with the group of parents that we were doing it with, there were things that I questioned. Two things in particular at the time, and this was in like 2005, so still very different than now in technology. But there was a computer room, and we were in a small city. So the kids that were like over 12, basically every day, went down to the corner store, bought a bunch of junk food, came back and played video games. And there was like art rooms, there was a library, there was a kitchen, there were all these things that were supposed to foster like child-led learning. But I watched these kids do this, and from the Sudbury concept, and I mean, people can clearly do it in various ways, but this group of people, they're like, no, like we won't stop them from that. And I resonate deeply with child-led learning. And I think for me, I was like, well, what about neuroscience? What about addiction theory? I'm like, wait a minute. Like when this arose to, life in the 70s, we didn't have technology the way that we do. We didn't have processed food available to children.
Yeah.
And don't we want to talk about this? And they didn't, so that I was like, okay, well, this isn't really for me. So we didn't do
That's
that
where the
anymore.
quantum comes in, right?
Yeah.
Like when if you're just all in nature, you have no choice but to use the light that's available, to eat the foods that are available, whatever.
Yeah.
But once there is that choice introduced, our biology is tricked, essentially, right? And the children are especially vulnerable to that. Like, we know that they have like their nerves aren't fully not myelinated yet, so they're extremely sensitive to those EMF frequencies and right, like all of their hormone patterns and everything. So that's so wise of you to notice, like, hey, this pattern, like it being child led, right? That's not the same thing as a child led experience when everything around is healthy, right?
Exactly.
And I also think this, just ties so nicely back to where we began this conversation when you were sharing about the difference between you as the center of your child's world to giving them a center that is transcendent and like inclusive of yourself, right? Like, what are you both held by? What is the pillar that you both are, attracted to?
Yeah, exactly.
So I love that. And I have seen similar patterns in other families who are still kind of ascribing to that completely child-led philosophy. I've also seen it a little bit shortcoming. So where did you go from there? And also, just to interrupt quickly, because there have been some new folks joining, Jay and Jaydee are here chatting about their experiences with home birth and home education. And they have a podcast that's called the Rising Sovereign Podcast. That is an absolutely lovely resource drawing on their wisdom and experiences with raising 6 children, some of whom are now young adults and successfully navigating the outer world. And they also had a nature school where they were facilitating education for families in their local area. So they're an absolute wealth, very experienced and knowledgeable about all kinds of things relating to raising children and navigating education and all kinds of, all the things that we as parents have to navigate that are more difficult now than they used to be in the past when everything was just simple. So just to give a little bit of context and reminders here about what we're doing in this conversation. And Jaydee is also part of the Quantum Biology Collective, where we are really deeply pushing the boundary of what we know and how we're applying knowledge of circadian health and electromagnetic frequencies, and deliberately immersing ourselves in nature and natural light so that we can have optimal health and optimal mental clarity. And I think that's something that is really missing from the current paradigm of indoor based education, because that's kind of like what happens. So from child-led learning strictly to starting to introduce more, particularly also around like morals and cultural responsibility, I think is something I see lacking. So if you care to pick up your story again, to hear where did you go next from that?
We did enter into some Waldorf education. So our kids went, not like every year, they didn't all go. Like a couple of kids were in the Waldorf school, a couple of kids were still homeschooled. And that went on for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, close to that. And then a couple that actually, separate from that, my oldest boy entered into an apprenticeship with a builder in our community at the age of 14. So he did that for right up until he was in 11th grade. So maybe 3 or 4 years. And then he switched to the community college. But the most with specific educational pedagogical model that we used outside of anything else was Waldorf.
Yeah. Well, when Jaydee and I met, your kids were in the Waldorf school.
Not all of them, but
some of your kids were in the Waldorf school.
Yeah.
Your oldest, or Ukiah, was coming and doing. I had a kind of like an informal homeschool co-op
when we met,
and that's actually how we met, because her oldest was coming and doing spending some time on the day that I was facilitating.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were doing a lot of nature-based things out in the woods. And, but, like one of the things that I think Waldorf has to offer is this shift on the urgency of time in relation to like reading. That's one of the obvious things that I feel like is beneficial to that system is they're not rushing the kids to start reading when they're in first grade or kindergarten.
Yeah.
So what else about that?
Yeah. So I think the Waldorf model with the rhythms and close to nature, natural colors, natural items, and all of that was really, really aligned for us. And also like working within the context of how they do integrate neuroscience, whether it's like more of a spiritual view of neuroscience, it's there. And I really appreciated that.
But it's interesting to think about the Sudbury versus the Waldorf because there's almost like they're pretty opposite on the ends of the spectrum as far as structure.
Yeah. Because Waldorf is very structured.
Very structured.
Yes. And then, so when 2020 happened, and everything shut down, including the Waldorf school, that was when we created the program that we did. And so that's a very crunched version of our kids' education, but it's a good sense of how we
so
approached it.
getting fully into you being the primary with that education was kind of forced basically by that, and because of your backgrounds and all of everything, you were equipped to take that step and become a hub for your community in their time of need. Yeah. Lovely. Yeah, that's so amazing. And then since, obviously we're getting close to our hour. So to accelerate through, I know that you went from you were started in a crisis and then there was another crisis, right, with the hurricane that then closed it all down, right? So it was kind of like this window, this like blossom of like this short period of time where you had to fully dive into this, and then the universe kind of, or however you want to say that, was like, and now you're done, right? And so now you're having to navigate all over like a whole new fresh set of decisions for your children around that, and through that experience also now finding new ways to communicate with other families who are going through such similar things. Like we're all going through these, just shifting, like there's so many different ideas to get back to one of the other things you said that I really gives me a lot to think about too, in terms of how many choices we have. Like we go to the internet for a question and we get 3,000 results that, may be completely different tomorrow. Whereas when we talk with a person, we get a story that has a thread, right? And so you can talk with that person and get a new story and a new thread every time, but they're all part of the same tapestry. So I really do see this shift happening where people are disillusioned with Google is the answer for everything. And it's like with AI now too, like people are using like these AI chats, and the AI chat is like the solution to everything. And you can see how flat it is and how one-sided and shifted, and how ultimately unsubstantial because it's so algorithmic. Whereas a human is based on pattern, is based on biology. It has a depth of experience. It has a spiritual connection. So the shift towards community, I would love to hear more about the community that you're building and your vision for the kinds of resources and relationships parents can cultivate through your work with the Rising Sovereign podcast and community, and or just life in general. Like if you have some pearls of wisdom to share, some visions to help people paint this future.
Wow, that's a big question.
I know.
Well, I know. Yeah, I know. Well, for us, the podcast is culmination of everything that we've done. And I think that that's what a podcast is ultimately supposed to offer is, the heart and soul and wisdom that the person bringing the information to the world. It's their platform. And so for us, having gone through all these touch points and then the school, which again, the school could be a whole nother day's worth of conversations and all the things we went through and learned and the different models we used. At one point, we were very focused on therapy, and then we realized how much therapy has been kind of shifted and changed and isn't doing what we thought it would. So that was like a big moment for everybody in our community. But the podcast is then for us, like it's bringing together homeschool, it's bringing together quantum biology, what that really means, like how we continue to go deeper and deeper into that and explore as parents what we can do for our children's future in relation to their health.
Mm.
And then looking at the sovereign piece and how we are reclaiming our families and the parents and the children and the relationship between that and the lineage that we want to continue to usher in. And it's like, however, kind of doom and gloom you might want to go or not, but we're at a bit of like a tipping point in relation to, some might say transhumanism with AI or, where we're going with our healthcare and our education, and to really create a space where we can have the opportunity to share our experiences, to connect with other people, really wise, awesome people. We have some great interviews coming up that can talk about even the history of education, really getting into how schools were formed, why they are the way they are, and is that what you want for your kids beyond just like EMFs and sitting in a chair? There's so much more to that. Um,
Well,
what do you want to say?
I mean, I look at it as, these different, like you said, choice points and
Yeah.
things. And if we look at like education, we look at AI, we look at the medical system and how a lot of these things, as well intentioned as they may be, oftentimes kind of sever us from ourselves and each other. And so there's this yearning and search of a deep desire to help preserve like our collective humanity,
Yeah.
So starting with ourselves and then our own families and then connecting with others in as much of a analog fashion as we're able to,
Right.
as we're able
Like,
to
well, we're
muster.
online and all of the ways that we are, but hoping that through bringing in then an element of community where people can continue to connect with us and connect with each other and really build that place that they can go to and know that they'll be able to ask a question that might be a little fringe or feel some camaraderie when they just went to the dentist and felt like all of their power was stripped away again when they felt like they were super prepared to, interface with the dentist. Stuff like that. And in addition to just the stories and like the fellowship, where we have so many resources and tools and form letters that you could send into, whoever you might be sending them to in relation to asking for waivers or exemptions and things like that. So really wanting to, have a place where you can truly, because of our backgrounds, get answers to your kids' education and also like what I should eat for dinner and how that relates to when the sun's going to rise tomorrow. And then, wait a minute, I really don't want my child to get a tattoo. What should I do? Stuff like that. Right? Yeah. Or they might come home with one that they did in their homeschool co-op, and you have to figure out how to like punish them for this like artistic expression, but they didn't ask for permission. And they're only 15. Yeah. So
Yeah.
things like that.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, absolutely. The human connection around all these things. I think that is such a beautiful thing and such a needed thing to have a real person to talk to. That is just such a wonderful service and offering. Homeschooling is massively on the rise. And so that's one thing I would say as we're wrapping up here for anyone who's listening that's kind of, questioning, the homeschooling community is growing. More and more people are taking this route with their families. And so there are wonderful resources like you two, Jay and Jaydee, and, also local people that you can connect with, I'm sure, because it is a growing movement. It's a strong movement. It is the way that things were done in the past, where we would prepare children for the lives they were going to have and not assume that that was going to be in the factory model.
Yeah.
Of everyone having it exactly the same, right? Going for apprenticeship, going for thought, thinking deeply about the kind of culture that you want to impart. So thank you. Can you share with everyone how they can connect with you? There's obviously your publishing here on Substack. You have some lovely posts in the archive. You also have a podcast and community. So could you share the best way for people to connect with you so they can join along your journey?
Yeah, so we are on Instagram, Rising Sovereign Podcast, and Substack, Rising Sovereign Podcast. On Spotify, Apple, and iHeartRadio, you can find us.
Mm-hmm.
Probably other places at this point.
Okay.
But yeah.
Great. Okay. Yeah.
And we're in Asheville, North Carolina, if you want to come by. We used to run a nature school here. And we'll probably continue to, at some point, invite people back to the land because it's a really beautiful place and resource that we have.
Yeah, it is. Your space looks absolutely gorgeous. And I was recently reading that North Carolina is one, and both the Carolinas actually are some of the most in demand, most popular places to be, that have the most people who want to stay of any state, as well as the most people who want to move there of any of the states. It's a very desirable place, and I've heard nothing but good things about it. And I see behind you, in spite of said hurricane, that it looks absolutely gorgeous. So I love that thought, and maybe we'll be popping over one of these days. Great. Well, thank you. This was so much fun, and I really enjoyed getting to know you two better. Thanks for chatting with me about this. Yeah. Have a good evening.
All right. Thanks.
Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye.